Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick too. A ton of you guys were asking me to do an updated version of the Bone Spear Necro build, even with Season 1 right around the corner. I think a lot of you guys are just curious about how the build shapes up after the nerfs, what things you may need to change, and if you're curious what actually got nerfed in the first place. So I'm just going to give you guys a real quick video just going over everything. Again, everything will be over on the website, and this is still a fantastic build, one of the best builds in the entire game for just doing raw damage, and it'll still be really good in Season 1. It did get a pretty significant nerf, and I will definitely go over everything with you guys, but as you can see, the damage is still unbelievably strong. You can still absolutely annihilate Lilith like you saw, though you can still do up to like 12 million damage in one individual hit while just playing with the build normally. I'm pretty sure you can even get up to about 15 to 18 million if you have like literally perfect circumstances, but yeah, build is still very good. Before I get into the video, I want to give a big thanks to today's sponsor, Bloodline Heroes of Lithis. Bloodline's Heroes of Lithis is a free-to-play card-based fantasy RPG game with realistic graphics where you can not only collect champions, build kingdoms, but also create legendary heirs of your houses by combining forces of various different bloodlines, such as orcs, lycans, demons, and even dragonborn. Download and try the game for free by using my link in the description or scanning the QR code on screen and receive an amazing starter pack worth $20. You can further customize your champions by marrying different bloodlines until you find the perfect unique combination of powerful abilities and traits that suits your personal gameplay. You can create even stronger offspring by marrying champions together and receiving new champions for free. There's an insane amount of champion combinations, and it's a ton of fun trying all of them out and finding out which combination is perfect for you. Not to mention, every single 2 weeks there's actually new characters that come out that have their own unique abilities, and they are available for each gender. A great example of that would be the Goat Folk Stone Throwers, that was very hard to say, who originated from the lands of the Dragonborn and became the finest marksmen after finding an ancient artifact of power in the ruins of a lost civilization. Bloodline's Heroes of Lithis is available for free on mobile for both Android and iOS, so make sure to download using the link in the description or scanning the QR code on screen and get a special starter pack worth over $20, giving you a summoning crystal, 100,000 gold, and 100 diamonds. And the first 30 players who leave their in-game account ID and username under the pinned comment will get a free legendary female orc champion Ugrel, which is by far one of the strongest warriors in the game. Big thanks to Bloodline's Heroes of Lithis for sponsoring today's video. This is not going to be a very traditional build video. If you want to know like everything about the build, feel free to watch the previous video, which a lot of you guys watched, so thank you very much for the support on that video. That's going to be like probably the most viewed video on my channel ever, so that's really crazy. Thank you guys very much. But I'm just going to very quickly go over everything, go over the changes, and then just go over the personal things that I changed about the build to compensate for a lot of the things that happened. So there's a lot of nerfs that happened, and many of them were undocumented. I'm going to speedrun them. The first one, and probably the most important one, maybe not the most important, but whatever, splintering got nerfed. So splintering previously, if you were to put on a two-hander, would give you 225% bonus damage for your bone shards. That is now down all the way to 135% if you put it on a two-hander, because the scale is kind of weird, does not scale. Just as a 100% bonus, doesn't matter. My cat wanted to get down. So effectively what this means is it got a pretty sizable nerf for the bone shards, but additionally, we're not actually going to be able to spawn 5 bone shards anymore. We're only spawning 3. And that is because this legendary previously was bugged, which I said in the video, which basically it made it to where your first hit with Bone Spear was going to instantly apply vulnerable with just having this legendary on, which is not how it's supposed to function. So basically you're getting vulnerable for free in addition to buffing your bone spear, your bone shards by a 225%, and then also as a result of not having to play Supernatural for the vulnerable application, you could play Paranormal Bone Spear. This got changed to where basically you're no longer going to have the 5 shards, so you're going to lose 5% crit chance, and you're only going to shoot off 3 shards, which is a pretty significant nerf overall to the build. Probably the most significant nerf. When you're fighting Lilith, you can still play with Paranormal Bone Spear because you just instantly apply vulnerable. But when you're just playing normal dungeons, the most important thing is applying vulnerable instantly. This is why a lot of you guys are having problems right now. If you did not swap to this, you're gonna, your initial Bone Spear hit is gonna do like 500, 400k damage because you're not applying vulnerable, and you're just missing out on a ton of damage. So this is the main thing that we need to swap with the build, is swapping over to Supernatural. And also no longer playing with Splintering on the two-hander. Splintering on the two-hander is probably still a little bit better if you're fighting Lilith, but generally speaking, you want to play with Ossified on your two-hander now because it's straight up just 40% extra damage, because we will have roughly 100% crit chance. If you have literally perfect gear with crit chance everywhere, and then you still play with Grasping Veins on your Amulet, you can still get up to 100% crit chance. It's very hard. The reason that it's very hard now is because Serration got nerfed, which they also did not mention in the patch notes, so thank you Blizzard, but this got nerfed a significant amount to where you get 0.9% crit chance for every 30 essence that you have on cast rather than every 10 essence. So the amount of crit chance that you get from this is significantly worse than it used to be. I'm getting roughly 20% when I have like a max resource potion on my character and I have as much max essence on my gear as possible. Another thing that got nerfed is max essence. On my Deathless Visage, you could previously get up to 27 max essence, and on rings, you could get from 14. Instead of 14, it would be 18. This hurts to build in a myriad of ways, mainly less scaling with Serration, less scaling with Ossified Essence, so that is pretty unfortunate. Another thing is Grasping Veins' crit damage multiplier got nerfed, so it went from 90% down to 60%. On top of that, the build just got hurt just like every other build did because vulnerable damage got nerfed and crit damage got nerfed, and even having crit damage on your sword got nerfed. So that's a lot of nerfs, and honestly, like I made a video talking about, it's not that bad, and it isn't that bad, okay? The build is still really good, but it's not nearly as good as it used to be. You can still walk into dungeons and do crazy amounts of damage. You can still melt Uber Lilith, but overall your damage is not anywhere near what it used to be, and you're going to need to invest into the build significantly more to get more of a return, right? It's just harder to, like, you're not going to be able to just hit level 60 and boom, you're instantly just a god, right? You need pretty good gear in order to actually perform pretty well with the build. So let's go over some of the things that I ended up changing with the build. I actually changed my skills a little bit. The reason for this is basically you do not have 100% crit chance anymore without your Grasping Veins activated, and also because of all the damage nerfs, you just do not do enough damage to kill things in one Bone Spear anymore unless they are actually Corpse Tendrilled and you're benefiting from the crit damage from Grasping Veins. What this actually means in practical application is basically we don't really want to be throwing Bone Spears out like crazy unless enemies are Corpse Tendrilled. It's kind of just a waste of our time. It's just the mobs won't die, we don't have enough crit chance to guarantee crit, and we need all this extra damage in order to actually kill stuff. So the main thing that I'm doing to make this a lot easier for us is rather than like trying to find one mob to hopefully kill him quickly and then Corpse Tendril, I just decided to put on Reap instead of playing with Bone Storm. Playing without Bone Storm, it's a little unfortunate, but the cooldown on it is just really long. They nerfed cooldown reduction, so that's very nice. But it sucks playing without Bone Storm because it gave us damage reduction and it gave us crit chance. But if we have Reap, we can get a guaranteed corpse anytime we just walk into a pack of mobs. So we can just walk into them, press Reap, instantly form a corpse, and just instantly Corpse Tendril. We don't have to rely on any weird crap with like Hued Flesh or trying to like kill one mob individually and then throw out the Corpse Tendril. We can just always have a very consistent, just walk in, Reap, form the corpse onto everything, boom, everything dies. That's pretty much the main change that I made with the build. I also got us a bit more survivability because our survivability got nerfed. When it comes to the other spells, I've talked about this in pretty lengthy detail in the previous video. I still like to use Decrepify or Iron Maiden, depending on which one. It's up to you. And then still Corpse Explosion and Corpse Tendrils and Blood Mist for the oh shit button. When it comes to the actual skill tree, I'll just quickly go over things. This probably won't be updated on the website. I'll probably update it once the season actually comes out. I just want to make a really quick video kind of updating you guys. So I went for Reap for the Acolytes Reap, and Reap also gives us a 15% damage reduction, which is pretty nice. Bone Spear, and obviously we have to go Supernatural now. And don't take your points out of Imperfectly Balanced. This is currently bugged. As you can see, you can't see 3 out of 3. We go 3 out of 3 here, but if you take the points out, it doesn't let you put them back in. They like completely broke it. I don't know what's going on there. We don't need Hued Flesh because we're guaranteed spawning enough corpses as it is. We have Blood Mist. And then one thing that is entirely optional is I went for Blighted Corpse Explosion. Because this is a damage over time effect, it will actually scale Disobedience significantly faster. And Disobedience got Omega nerfed, and our survivability hurts a lot as a result of it. Without this, it's very hard to even stack Disobedience up at all. So there's a world where you just don't play Disobedience at all, and you just deal with having like no armor, and you just play Super Glass Cannon, or you just try to get like Aspect of the Protector for Barrier or something, and you just take the points out of this. But I found that for like speed farming and some other stuff, you get really good Disobedience uptime by just having this on, but it's not really mandatory. 1 point to Grim Harvest, the essence here is kind of whatever, and then 3 points to the Fueled by Death, which is one of the main reasons we're even using Corpse Explosion, is to just give us this extra damage, but it's also survivability, and also every once in a while we will proc Flesh Eater by just consuming corpses with Corpse Explosion for the 40% extra damage. One of the main things that helps the build now is that we go 3 points into Amplified Damage, and we use a Curse skill, obviously, so this is just extra damage for us because we are losing some damage, and this also got slightly buffed, so that's cool. Death's Reach for the extra damage to distant enemies. If you want more survivability, Death's Embrace is pretty good. I'm just like really strapped for points, so I couldn't fit it, even though I quite like it. But I've kind of just accepted that if enemies are too close to you, you're probably gonna die. I don't know. It's kind of hard to play with the build at this point, but you could like lose, for example, attack speed and go for that if you wanted more survivability. When it comes to Corpse Tendrils, I still go into Blighted for the slow, and then the Blood Orbs. The Blood Orbs makes it to where we can get Fortify through our Blood Drinker glyph, which I tried to play without. I tried to play like a full Glass Cannon build, and it's not fun getting one-shotted by literally everything in the game. It just wasn't fun to play with, so I put this back on. We'll talk more about the Paragon Board later, but getting the Blood Orbs there gives us Fortify, which just helps our survivability a lot. Obviously, Serration, Compound Fracture, and Avulsion for damage. Avulsion is still the best thing you want on your Amulet. 3 into Standalone for damage reduction, 3 into Memento Mori to buff our sacrifices, Ossified Essence. When it comes to our sacrifices, crit chance from the Skirmishers, and then we want the Skeletal Mages Cold. You could go Shadow, but significantly just not nearly as good because Serration got heavily nerfed, so you don't get much crit value from this at all. And the 15% increased damage to vulnerable enemies is literally just straight up better than having 15 Essence. Then for the Golems, of course, we go for the 30% crit multi. You guys already know all that. When it comes to the Paragon Board, if you're trying to get a lot of damage, this is one of the ways that you can do it. If you feel like you're missing a lot of damage, but your survivability is fine, you can actually just take Blood Drinker off and instead go for Control. Control is a crazy amount of damage, because if you're using Decrepify or you're just using Corpse Tendrils, you're stunning enemies or slowing them, which is going to increase your damage on them by either 10 or 20% multiplicatively. But also, Necro has very little additive damage overall, so when you fully buff a Control up at like level 21 or something, and you have all the int nodes possible in this first board, you get over like 130% damage to crowd control or something. It's a crazy amount of damage. That is one of the best ways that we can actually mitigate the fact that we lost a ton of damage with the build. And when it comes to the other stuff, I mean, I'll have a link to the Paragon Board in the description if you want. It's still the old version of the build, so I'm not going to have the updated skill points and whatnot, but it is basically the same Paragon Board. Just make sure that you get like exploits pretty early on. If you're like level 60 or something, you want to get exploit ASAP, and then you want to put essence in your second board. But getting Bone Graft is very good for the max essence. All the essence here, essence on kill, max HP is cool. Imbiber is a lot of extra damage for us, blah, blah, blah. Scent of Death is okay. Flesh Eaters, whatever. And then getting Gravekeeper here is pretty nice for the extra damage to elites. You could make the argument that you could put Control instead of Gravekeeper for overall more damage, but then you'd have to get some more points to actually put over here to get all the intellect, and then you'd have to lose either some max HP or some damage elsewhere. So kind of up to you. Figured I'd give you guys the option there. I'll probably make an updated version when Season 1 actually comes out, and I most likely will be trying to fit in Control. And then I have Essence here, but again, if you're still leveling, you want this somewhere else, and this is just nice for the extra crit damage. When it comes to Legendaries, we're still using the same stuff. The main difference is that you want to put Serration on your two-hander now, because it's just better than the Splintering, because Splintering got nerfed in like, 2 different ways. So Splintering, you just put on like gloves or something, gloves or a ring, it doesn't matter. And then Serration is what you want on your two-hander. On your Amulet, you still want Grasping Veins because you need the massive value of the crit chance, and you pretty much need the crit damage. Even though the crit damage did get nerfed, you're very strapped for crit chance with the build, and if you don't crit, you do literally 0 damage. So you need as much crit chance as you can realistically get. Edge Masters is okay, but realistically, you want either Umbral or Exposed Flesh for just higher uptime on maximum essence. You can actually use both of them together, but if you're using like Decrepify plus Corpse Tendrils, Umbral will basically keep you fully topped off on your essence. But you could feel free to use both. Edge Masters is nice for the extra damage. On the boots, you just want crits, give you movement speed, and then I went for basic skills, give you damage reduction, since we are now using Reap. So anytime we use Reap, we get 35% damage reduction, which really helps mitigate the fact that we lost so much DR with the build. Disobedience, I mean, I'm using like the Corpse Explosion stuff that I mentioned, but it's still way worse than it used to be, and it's really hard to stack it very well on Necro and take too much advantage of it. You could play with Protector instead. I had Deathless Visage, but with all the survivability nerfs, I think that it's probably worth it to just not play with this anymore. You do lose, you know, some physical damage and crit with Bone Skill. It's not a big deal. I'd rather probably play with a normal helmet, get another survivability legendary, get armor on it, max HP, essence, and cooldown reduction, because our cooldown reduction overall got nerfed a bit, so having more for our blood mist and stuff would be pretty nice. That's the stats on the helmet. For the chest, you just want armor, damage reduction, max HP. Armor's not nearly as good as it used to be. There may even be a world where you just stop going for armor at all because of the way that it kind of scales up. So you'd maybe just, you know, be better off going for full max HP, but I'm not 100% sure on that. With the gloves, you want Ranks to Bone Spear and chance to restore primary resource. That's the most important thing so that you can have good essence uptime. Chance to restore primary resource paired with Decrepify and Umbral, or even Iron Maiden instead of Decrepify, is basically going to give you infinite essence. And then crit chance and crit damage. Alternatively, you get attack speed instead of the crit damage. Lucky hit chance is not necessary. On the pants, still damage reduction, armor, damage reduction, and damage reduction while fortified if you're going a fortified version of the build with the Blood Drinker glyph. Alternatively, you would just get damage reduction while injured or something like that. On the boots, I go for a movement speed roll, but the main thing you want is movement speed, essence cost reduction, and then ranks to corpse tendrils for the cooldown reduction on the corpse tendrils. But you could also get fortified generation, or you can even get damage reduction while injured, which is probably very helpful for the build. When it comes to the two-hander, I actually don't recommend a sword anymore, which is kind of crazy, but the inherent crit damage from the sword is so low that with a perfectly set up build, the 21% crit damage for me actually maths out to a 3.4% damage increase. I'm perfectly fine losing 3.4% damage to then gain 300 life on kill with a maxed out scythe. The life on kill is massive survivability for us, but it actually correlates to damage when you're using the Imbiber glyph, so you are healthy way more often, and you're just topped off, so you just feel a lot tankier. I'm more than happy to lose a little bit of damage, and also scythes look sick, dude. Everybody wants to use a scythe, right? So yeah, we lose a lot of damage with, you know, the crit damage being nerfed on the two-hander, but it is what it is. You want intelligence, vulnerable damage, those are the two most important things, and then you want core skill damage and crit damage. The reason that core skill damage is better than getting bone crit damage or just a different crit damage roll, it doesn't matter. Crit damage and bone skill damage are interchangeable. They're the same thing. Don't worry about it. But the reason that core skill damage is better, pretty simple math. We have 600% crit damage, but we do not have 600% additive damage. We have less than like 400%. So getting the core skill damage is mathematically better. When it comes to the rings, you want crit damage, vulnerable damage, crit chance, maximum essence. The two most important things here is crit chance and vulnerable damage. Even though vulnerable got nerfed, it's still more important than the max essence. The crit damage is not nearly as important as getting the crit chance is, because we have so much crit damage inherently with the build, with our Paragon board, other stuff. Getting the crit chance first is way better, and vulnerable damage is super important. Also, this ring had like nearly max vulnerable damage, and with the rescaling, it just got nerfed to like having like the literal minimum roll for some reason. So that's cool. Thanks, Blizzard. And when it comes to the amulet, you want movement speed, essence cost reduction, cooldown reduction, and ranks to the Evulsion passive. Alternatively to Evulsion, you can get Compound Fracture. I would not recommend Imperfectly Balanced because it just makes it cost way too much. Your Bone Spear just ends up costing a lot. But getting the Compound Fracture is almost as good as Evulsion. That pretty much does it for the video. I'll show you guys a couple gameplay clips here. The main thing that you want to make sure to take advantage of with the build is that you're just not going to do too much damage unless you're actually corpse tendriling. So you want to make sure that when you enter a pack, you want to reap and then instantly consume that corpse by using the corpse tendril. And then right after you corpse tendril, you want to corpse explosion to get the extra miasma on the ground and the extra damage. And then you want to decrepify all the mobs so that you get the extra essence with your umbral ring, and then you can start blasting. Reap can be very difficult to play with, honestly, and I don't think it is like very noob friendly because you have to walk into the mobs and you have to hit a mob with Reap in melee range, and depending on how many enemies you hit with it, it'll just spawn a corpse randomly on which enemy you actually hit. So you have to make sure to like properly recognize which mob you spawn the corpse on and pretty much instantly spawn the corpse and try to stay alive. It's very difficult to play around. You can always just play the old-fashioned way where you just walk into mobs and just blast the crap out of them and hope that they die. That'll work. You just will run out of essence and you won't get very satisfying like massive blowups. And when you're missing the crit chance and the 60% multiplicative crit damage, which is basically just 60% damage, you're not going to be one-shotting things anymore. But if you play very particularly around Reap, around your Corpse Tendrils, make sure to take advantage of all of your damage multipliers with the Corpse Explosion, the amplified damage. You should still do crazy amounts of damage, up to 12 million, and you should be perfectly fine. But when you're running around doing easier stuff, I mean, you still will just like one-tap everything, so it's not really a big deal. But when you're fighting mobs that, you know, are pretty hard, or your gear isn't perfect, you definitely need to take advantage of kind of the combo of the big suck. You got to give the guys a big suck, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Just want to give you guys a quick update, and I will have a leveling Necro build, and I also have an updated endgame build once Season 1 actually comes out. So make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys later. Peace.